All right, well, good evening, folks. Andrew Sluder, pastor of Bible Baptist Church here in Asheville, North Carolina. And I'm going to give everybody just a minute or two to tune on here. But it's good to see you out. And I'm the pastor of Bible Baptist Church. Did I already say that? I'm losing my mind. I think I already said that. So anyway, but it's good to see you out tonight. I'm doing a video, of course, tonight on a very interesting topic that I think needs to be addressed. And there are a lot of people that are falling into a trap. And let me tell you what the trap is. The trap is this. They are King James only, but they are petrified of being labeled as a Ruckmanite or maybe being labeled as an extreme KJV only guy. So what they'll do is they'll say, I'm King James only, but. I'm King James only, but. I'm King James only, but. Well, let me say tonight, folks, I want to unashamedly 100% say that Andrew Sluder is King James only, and that's the end of the statement. There is no but after that statement. I am King James only. And so what the trap has been, that these people don't want to get labeled with being extremely King James. Well, I'm King James only, but that's not what I want to be known for. And so what ends up happening is they begin to feed into the lies and to the accusations that the Bible critics give towards the King James. And so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to take a few of the lies and accusations that I've heard against the King James Bible by some men who claim themselves to be King James only. And so now we Bible believers are not just having to defend the King James Bible against Bible correctors and against men who, use other versions, but we're now having to defend the King James Bible against men who claim to be King James only. And so we're just going to go through here and address some of these issues. I'm going to say some very I'm going to say some very bold statements tonight. I'm going to say some very pointed statements. So just buckle up, gear up. Here it goes. These are in no particular order. I just wrote them down. And listen, if you can think of one that I've not gone through and you want to comment on it, comment one that you've heard, I may be able to address it off the top of my head. Who knows? But let's just dive right in tonight. Number one, the first thing I hear about the King James Bible, and it is a lie, is that, King James was a homosexual. Why would you read a Bible that was put out by a homosexual? Well, there's two lies wrapped into one. Number one, King James was not a homosexual. That lie was not propagated until 1650 by a man by the name of Anthony Weldon. He put out a paper. He was an arch enemy of King James, and that lie did not come out until 25 years after the death of King James. So, folks, saying that King James was a homosexual is digging in to hearsay by a man who hated his guts. Now, not only that, but the second issue is even if he was a homosexual, which he was not, but even if he was, that does not negate the work of the translators. You do realize that King James only authorized the Bible. He didn't actually translate it and write it. 54 of the most brilliant men at the time came together to work on this project. King James had nothing to do with the translation process of the King James Bible. So, he wasn't a homosexual, but even if he was, that does not negate the work of the translators. All right? Lie number two I've heard. Well, the King James Bible contains the Apocrypha. Sure, you don't believe in the 1611 King James Bible because that contained the Apocrypha. And those King James translators, they thought the Apocrypha should be included in the Bible. That is an absolute lie. Now, let me say what is true. It is true that for the first 200 years of the King James Bible, the Apocrypha was in the King James Bible. But I have here, here we go. I have here a facsimile copy of an original 1611 King James Bible. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more in just a second. But the Apocrypha was placed in between the Testaments. You can see here very clearly. The Old Testament ends, and this is probably going to be backwards for you guys, so I apologize. But the Old Testament ends, and the Apocrypha begins. And then you go, and the Apocrypha, and then the book of Matthew begins. Let me get there quickly. Should have already had these marked here. But then you see the New Testament. It was clearly defined in the text between the Testaments. Clearly put between the Testaments. Not only that, look, I have the Apocrypha right here. An entire as it was written in the King James Bible. The Apocrypha was not something new. It's not like the King James translators just all of a sudden decided, hey, you know what? I think it'd be a good idea if we put the Apocrypha in between the Testaments and include it in our Bible. Folks, they were not the first people to do that. In fact, all the English translations almost exclusively included the Apocrypha in between the Testaments. And in fact, but listen, all of them did it, but nobody ever believed they were inspired except for the Catholic Church. In fact, Miles Coverdale, the Coverdale Bible, English Bible, Miles Coverdale said this. He said, these books, which are called Apocrypha, are not judged among the doctors to be of like reputation with the other scriptures, as you may perceive by St. Jerome in Epistola ad Paulinum. And the chief cause thereof is this: there be many places in them, talking about the Apocrypha, that seem to be repugnant unto the open and manifest truth in other books of the Bible. That was Miles Coverdale. Not only that, here's a little interesting tidbit of information for all you people who want to try to claim that the Apocrypha was in the King James Bible by some kind of devilish work of King James, the horrid homosexual. King James wrote a series of 3 books to his son. They were called the Basilicon Duran. You can go online and look them up. They're everywhere. You can download a PDF form. There were 3 books written: the king's duty to man, the king's duty to God, and the king's duty to himself. And in the book, The King's Duty to God, King James writes this. This is King James, the King James of the King James Bible. He said, would ye know the doctrine, life, and death of our Savior Christ? Read the evangelists. That's the Gospels. Would ye be more particularly trained up in his school? Meditate upon the epistles of the apostles. And would ye be acquainted with the practices of that doctrine in the persons of the primitive church? Cast up the apostles' acts. Now listen to this next statement by King James. And as to the Apocrypha books, I omit them, because I am no papist, as I said before. He said, as to the Apocrypha books, I omit them because I'm not a papist. He said, I'm not part of the Roman Catholic Church. He said, and indeed, some of them are no ways like the dictation of the Spirit of God. You have even King James himself in a book that he wrote specifically for his son saying, I don't even read the Apocrypha because I'm not a Roman Catholic and they're not inspired by God. But yet you're going to have people who are even on our side, some of them, try to bring the authority and emphasis away from the King James Bible, even if they claim to be King James only, by saying, well, the original, the 1611 contained the Apocrypha. That's like, listen, I've got a King James Bible here. This is specifically a Ruckman Reference Bible. That's like saying, well, that contained the maps. Folks, just because a Bible contains something in it does not mean that it's inspired. I mean, hopefully everybody and their brother understands that. Nobody thinks that the notes in a Bible are inspired. And so everybody at the time, except for the Roman Catholics, knew and understood that the Apocrypha was not inspired. In fact, Josephus, and I forget where it's at. It's somewhere in this book I've been reading on the Apocrypha. Somewhere in here, and I forget where it says it, but even Josephus, the Jewish historian, said that the Apocrypha is not inspired, that the Jewish people had what he called 22 books, because in the Old Hebrew Bible, they're broken up into 22, not 39 books. So it's very clear that that is a lame excuse to say, well, the Apocrypha is in the original 1611. It's lame. But not only that, they'll go even further and say, well, you couldn't even read an original 1611. I've heard that many times. That is a huge lie put out by a lot of guys that claim to be King James only. You couldn't even read an original 1611. Folks, that is an absolute lie, and that is a number one key phrase for Bible correctors who want to, feign themselves, put on a facade of being King James only. When the King James Bible came out in 1611, there were two basic font sets. There was the Gothic font set, and basically the Times New Roman, or I don't exactly know how you would describe this font set, but it was similar to our Times New Roman, okay? Now, I'm going to show you, this is the Gothic typeset. This is a copy of a 1611. This is the Gothic typeset, okay? You can see it there. It's going to be backwards to you guys. Now, here's the thing. This one is a little bit more difficult to read. You kind of have to pay attention to the words. But folks, you can read a Gothic typeset 1611 King James Bible if you will remember that the U's are sometimes V's and the V's are sometimes U's, and that there were no J's. There were no J's in 1611. There were only I's in the Bible. So Jesus was spelled capital I-E-S-U-S. And sometimes the S's were actually F's. Okay, so pass, P-A-S-S, would sometimes look like P-A-F-F. Hey, but if you understand that, you can read one. But look at how much easier this one is to read. This would have been available in 1611. Look at that. This one's very easily read, and both of them were available. Here's the thing, folks. I gave this one to my 7-year-old son, and he picked this up. I said, hey, Levi, read this. I just put it in his hand, told him to read it. And he started reading it with very, very little trouble. I gave this one to a 10-year-old boy in my church, and he read this one with very, very little trouble. The fact of people saying, well, you couldn't even read an original 1611, lie. That is a lie. That is a farce. That is a mute point that people try to pull you away from the authority of the authorized 1611 King James Bible. But not only that, they'll say this, well, there's been a lot of revisions in the King James Bible since 1611. Anybody ever heard that? Well, you don't even have an original 1611. You have a 1769 King James Bible. Folks, I think this one might just be the epitome of lies against the King James Bible, because if you go back and you have, listen, I've got a 1769 King James Bible right here. You take this and you take this, and I want you to show me the differences besides font and spelling. Font and spelling, show me the differences. Show me. No doubt there were spelling mistakes. No doubt there were printer's error. There's the famous he-she Bible. There's the famous adulterer's Bible where they left out the word not. But folks, if you were to take a 1611 King James Bible that rolled fresh off the press, you were to take that one and you were to take this quote-unquote 1769 King James Bible, you are going to have about 25, if I'm remembering correctly, legitimate word changes, most of which can be chalked up to printing mistakes. Listen, folks, you can bark all you want to, trying to get the authority away from that 1611 King James Bible, but you're lying through your teeth when you do it. You say, well, you know, the original 1611, all you King James guys, you think that came right off the Apostle Paul's press. Man, get out of there with that junk. Listen, I've got a stack of Bibles right here. I don't know if you can see that very well or not. You can't see all of them. But I've got a, let's see here. What is this one? This is a New American Standard. I've got the New Jerusalem. I've got the NKJV. I've got the New Living. I've got the NIV. I've got another NIV. I've got an ESV. I've got the Message Bible, and I've got a New World Translation. Let me show you what a real revision looks like. You want to know what a real revision looks like? I have got here an NIV Bible. Let's see when this one, I think this is 1984 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is a 1984 NIV. All right, here I've got, I think this is the latest one, which I think 2011 was the latest, and I think this is exactly what it is. Of course, they come out with them all the time. This is a 2011. I'm almost positive that this is the latest one. So I've got a 1984 NIV and a 2011 NIV. Let me show you what a real revision looks like. Okay, I'm going to pick a random spot. Okay, Hosea. Here we go. Hosea chapter number 2 and verse number 16. So I've got it in my 1984, and I'm going to go to the 2011. The 2011. Let me get there quickly. I'm doing this completely random just to try to show you. Hosea chapter number 2 and verse number 16. Okay, here we go. Hosea 2:16. All right, Hosea 2:16 and verse number, here we go. Hosea 2:16. In that day declares the Lord. In that day declares the Lord. You will call me my husband. You will call me my husband. You will no longer call me my master. You will no longer call me my master. Word perfect, right? Perfect. I mean, it's just a random spot. Verse number 17. I will remove the names of the Baals from her lips. No longer will their names be invoked. I will remove the names of Baals from her lips. No longer will their names be invoked. You say, preacher, what's the problem here? This is what a true revision looks like. If you were to pick up an NIV Bible from 1984 and pick up an NIV Bible from 2011 and read in certain passages, you'd never be able to tell the difference. But let's go to some key passages. Go to Psalms. Well, this is assuming you have both of these NIV Bibles. You go to Psalms chapter number 12, the promise of preservation. Then you go to Psalms chapter 12 in the 2011. Psalms 12, the key passage of preservation. Now, Hosea 2:16 and 17, random place, completely unscathed. See how deceitful they are? But now listen to this. This is the 1984. Let's see here. Psalms 12:6. And the words of the Lord are flawless, like silver refined in a furnace of clay, purified 7 times. Listen to this. And the words of the Lord are flawless, like silver purified in a crucible, like gold refined 7 times. So not only do they remove the furnace there, the furnace of clay. Which one's easier to understand, furnace or crucible? I know what a furnace is, but what's a crucible? What in the world's a crucible? Well, if you're educated a little bit, you know that's a furnace, but the common man doesn't know what a crucible is. Hey, if I go throw something in the furnace, I know it's going to burn up, but if I throw something in the crucible, what in the world's that? Random passages, they leave completely the same. Not only that, but look at what it says there. Purify, the original NIV, but the 1984 NIV says purified 7 times. This one says, let me find it here. This one says refined 7 times. That's what it says. It's purified. They switch it up there. Like silver in a furnace, like silver refined in a furnace. And here it says, like silver purified in a crucible, like gold refined 7 times. And they mix up the metals. They don't even have the metals right. Now watch this. Here's the big one. Psalms 12, verse number 7. O Lord, you will keep us safe and protect us from such people forever. So they destroy the doctrine of preservation there. Because in the King James Bible it says, thou wilt preserve them. talking about the words. But here it says you'll preserve us. Completely destroys the doctrine of preservation in Psalms 12:7. But listen to what this one says. You, Lord, will keep the needy safe and will protect us forever from the wicked, who freely strut about when what is vile is honored by the human race. Now let me ask you a question. There is so much difference between the 1984 promise of preservation and the 2011 NIV promise of preservation, and both of them completely destroyed the doctrine from what's found in the King James Bible. So let me ask you a question. Why in the world would they keep Hosea 2:16 and 17 the same, but they would change the doctrine of the preservation of the Word of God? You want to talk about a revision? Let's talk about a revision. You want to talk about changes? Let's talk about changes. This is a 1984, 2011. What is that? I'm super bad at math. What is that? 20 years, 2004, then another 7. That's a 27-year difference, and they can't even keep Psalms 12 right. But you've got over 400 years, and it's still the same. Somebody say, yeah, glory. Somebody say amen. Get a little worked up, but I like it. Here's the reality, folks. I have heard all these false accusations against the King James. Well, it's been revised. You've got a 1769. You've got, oh, he was a homosexual. He was this. He was that. The bottom line is this. The King James Bible stands as the final authority for the English-speaking world. The King James Bible stands as the final authority in all matters of faith and practice. And you've got a bunch of guys out there that facade themselves with the King James Bible. I'm King James only, I'm King James only. And you hold their feet to the fire, and they're not King James only. Listen, I had a guy today trying to take me to the Hebrew to try to prove a doctrine. A major doctrine. He tried to say, well, you know, listen, you go to the Greek, you'll go to the Hebrew, you'll try to do, listen, if you can't find it in the English text, I'm not interested in talking about it. If you're going to go to the English, or if you're going to go to the Greek and Hebrew, go to the Greek and Hebrew, but don't call yourself a King James Bible believer. And let me say this. All these people out there that want to say, well, I believe the King James is preserved, but it ain't inspired. You ever heard that? Well, I believe it's preserved, but not inspired. You're lying through your teeth. You can't believe that this King James Bible is just preserved and not also inspired. Preservation and inspiration are like Siamese twins conjoined at the heart. If you separate them, they both die. Sam Gipp said it right. Inspiration without preservation is a divine waste of time. Let me show you this. Everybody should have this one. 1 John chapter number 2. 1 John chapter number 2. Go to 1 John chapter 2. Well, I believe it's preserved, but it's not inspired. It was just, it's preserved, but there was no special inspiration in 1611. 1 John chapter 2, and look at verse 23. 1 John 2:23. Whosoever denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father. But he that acknowledgeth the Son hath the Father also. What is interesting about 1 John 2:23? What's interesting about it is the entire second half of the verse is in italics. Now, if you know what the King James translators did with the italics words, you understand that those were places where there was no Greek or manuscript authority for what they were saying in the text. And sometimes you have to do that because of translation. For example, I speak a little bit of Spanish. There is no such thing as Andrew's book in Spanish. There's no plural possessive. There's no Andrew's book. You have to say el libro de Andrés. That means the book of Andrew. That's how you have to say it. So in some cases, there were times where the King James translators had to put a word here, or put a word there for translation purposes so it would make sense in the English. But folks, they've got the entire second half of the verse in italics. You know what that means? That means that in 1611, well, a few years before, whenever they were doing 1 John, somebody looked over and said, hey, so-and-so, I think we ought to add the second part of that verse. I think we ought to put, but he that acknowledgeth the Son hath the Father also. You know what? Yeah, I think we ought to do that too. And there it is. Interestingly enough, some 200 years later, they find Greek texts that clearly have that phrase in there, but the King James translators didn't have them at the time. But they find later texts 200 years later that had that in there. How about this one? How about go to Matthew? Go to Matthew chapter number 4. Matthew chapter 4, the temptation of Christ. I'm having a good time here. Just you can stay or you can leave, whatever, but I'm having a good time. Matthew chapter 4. Go to Matthew chapter 4. Jesus is being tempted here with eating the bread. Look at Matthew chapter 4 and verse number 4. But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Notice carefully, there is not a single italic word, or italicized word in that verse. Not a single italicized word in that verse. But he's quoting a verse in the Old Testament, as it is written. Well, the Old Testament verse is Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse number 4. Deuteronomy chapter number 8 and verse number 4. Look at what Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse number 4 says. Let me get there quickly. Deuteronomy 8:4, it's the verse, and it says, wait a second, I'm sorry, Deuteronomy 8:3. Deuteronomy 8:3. Look at the very last phrase in there. But by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. Notice that word is in italics. But when Jesus quotes it, it's not in italics. You know what that means? That means the manuscript that records what the Lord said in Deuteronomy 8:3 does not have the italics. But when Jesus says it, it's included in the manuscript. Those italicized words are there by divine inspiration. And anybody who wants to say, well, the italicized words aren't inspired, or the italicized words, I had somebody say, I just skip over them. Listen, I'm sick of all these lies about the King James Bible being floated around, and I'm sick of hearing them in our own circles of people who claim to be King James only. Now, listen, I don't get contentious about a whole lot of things. I like to go back and forth at times, and I like to say different things, and we like to go back and forth about the gap and all that, me and Brother Randy. But if there's one thing I'll get contentious about, it's salvation in the King James Bible. And you listen to me and listen to me closely. I am sick and tired of having all these sissies running around trying to get people sucked into their Bible colleges, get sucked into their churches, get sucked into their ministries, saying, I'm King James, I'm King James, I'm King James. And then they go and it's a bait and switch. Here's the King James Bible, King James Bible, King James Bible. When you get into their Bible department or their preaching class and it's a bait and switch, here's the Greek text. I'm going to start calling them out. And I'm going to, listen, all you people that are spreading these lies, enough's enough. Either be King James or don't be King James. And I'm holding your feet to the fire. You say, well, all you King James, all you guys, people, all you Ruckmanites, all you want to do is King James Bible, King James Bible. Well, obviously we weren't even beating it hard enough. We weren't beating the drum hard and loud enough. Because now you've got, listen, Jack Scott, when Jack Scott, the pastor of the largest independent Baptist church in America, stands up in the pulpit of Jack Hyles and says there's 22,000 errors in the King James Bible, evidently something's wrong somewhere. And we see where he's at tonight. I wouldn't say that, preacher. Well, don't you say it, I will. He's in prison tonight. 22,000 errors in the King James Bible, leading fundamentalism astray with that. And God messed with his mind, and now he's in prison for messing with the minor. There's going to be a time when for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but will heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. Pseudo-King James onlyism, as Bill Grady would put it, is the scourge of the Laodicean age. Listen. Here's a stack of Bibles. None of them say the same thing. None of them can agree. All of them are different. listen, the cults and the clans and all this, they all have their Bibles. Listen, they all got them. You can find a Bible for your fancy. But why is it that we have all these authorities, and yet, listen, we have all these up-to-date Bibles, and yet not a one of them are good enough? And what you do when you say, I'm King James only, but you run back to the Greek, or you try to undermine the King James here, you undermine the King James there, you are slipping into the same mindset of all the people that produced these right here. You're slipping into the same mindset. One book stands alone, and that's that King James Bible. One book. When I say I'm King James only, there's no qualifying statement afterwards. I'm King James only, but no, I'm King James only, period. And I'll be King James only by the grace of God till the day I die. I'm not changing. I'm not going to undermine it. I'm not going to correct it. I'm not going to try to say it's good here, but no, 100% perfect. There ain't nothing in the Greek that you can show me that I can't find in the English. Listen, this is the final authority. Where the word of a king is, there is power. And that's the book, book Ecclesiastes. So, let's wrap this up. I could go on and on and on. Dr. Ruckman said it correctly. Dr. Ruckman said it very well with this statement. You pick on that book, I'll pick on you. And if there's something to get contentious about, it's this King James Bible. And what you've got is you've got a generation of people who have been handed, spoon-fed their King James Bible stances, but have never dug down to find out why they really believe it. And you've got, I had a young preacher yesterday try to tell me that getting truth out there is more important than what Bible translation somebody's used. Well, let's get the truth out there. Who cares what Bible translation they're using? And this guy goes to an independent, fundamental, temperamental, right-wing, chicken-eating Baptist church. And I know the pastor personally. And this guy told me, he said, I'm more concerned about getting truth out there than I am concerned about what Bible translation they're using. Hogwash. I wouldn't let a Bible corrector or an NIV user leading silent prayer in my church. All right, folks, I'm done. I may start saying some things that I really mean. But like and share this video. Get the truth out there. Let me scroll through here and see if anybody, is there any, listen, I didn't think I saw any, but is there any lies you've heard? Maybe share some of the lies you've heard. I don't think I saw any, just a lot of people egging me on. Amen. But, lies, man, just absolute lies about the King James Bible. So thank you for everybody who watched. I appreciate you. Pray for us here at Bible Baptist Church. Be back on Thursday for the Backwoods Bible broadcast. We want to see you here this coming Thursday. But like and share this video, man. Get the truth out there. I'm getting geared up for another round of whatever you want to call this, whatever this is. If you're in a church where the pastor is correcting that book, why in the world are you still there? If you are in a church where the pastor is saying, now we're King James only, but the Greek really said, why in the world are you still there? You say, preacher, are you telling people to leave their church over the King James Bible? Yes, 1,000 times yes. You need to get out of that church and find you a real church where a man's going to preach the book, not try to tell you what the book should say. And why in the world are you sending your kids to Bible colleges? I went to a Christian school and it was King James only, and it was fine. I'm not going to bash them. I'm not. There are good people that went there, and there were good people who taught there, and I'm not going to bash them. But under the Lord, they were King James only, but they would let representatives from Bob Jones University come in. But listen, Bob Jones University isn't even a Baptist college, and they've got 5 different translations of the Bible on their bookshelf. And Bob Jones University, listen, Bob Jones University has James White, who I'm not even convinced is saved. They've got James White's book down there, the King James Only Controversy, attacking. Listen, they use the Westcott and Hort Greek text down there at Bob Jones. It's absolutely unbelievable. And you're going to send your kids down there, and you're going to let your preacher boys go down there, and you're going to send them off these Bible colleges where they're not even King James only. I mean, Bob Jones doesn't even try to resemble a King James only institution. They like the ESV down there, and the ESV is missing 17 verses in the New Testament alone. Oh, and by the way, let me say one more thing. Let me just get one more thing going on here. All you people that say you're King James only, but you go back to the Greek every now and then to see what the Greek has to say about it, you do realize that you're using what's called Scrivener's Greek text. And Scrivener's Greek text, now I wish I had it here. Chris Jones, it's his, and I had it for a while, and I never did anything with it. Chris Jones has got it. But you're using Scrivener's Greek text. Scrivener back translated that. Scrivener's Greek text, which is the Trinitarian Bible Society is the one that puts out. If you've got a Greek text by the Trinitarian Bible Society, you have Scrivener's Greek text. I called Ambassador Baptist College, PCC, Crown College, Hyles-Anderson, all the major universities that use Greek or have Greek classes, they use Scrivener's Greek text. Scrivener's Greek text was not formulated until 1894. Now, if you got any brains in your head, you understand that 1894 came, what was it? 200, and I'm so bad at math, 83 years after, no, hang on. Yeah, 283 years after the translation of the King James Bible. So you've got a Greek text that was translated, the King James Bible did not come from that Greek text you're using if you're using one from the Trinitarian Bible Society. That Greek text came from the King James Bible. Boy, if that isn't Ruckmanism, your King James Bible's correcting the Greek text. Woo! Somebody help us. Oh, folks, it's too humorous to me. I mean, you talk about somebody getting the last laugh. You talk about somebody, listen, he took the King James Bible and back translated it. Oh, you used the King James Bible to correct the Greek text? You're using one. Oh, man, I mean, you talk about hilarious. And listen, another lie. I need to wrap this thing up, but I'm having too much of a good time. You talk about the originals. Oh, the originals. You've never seen the originals, and nobody you know's ever seen the originals. You're breathing in the originals right now. They're dust. They're dust right now. The originals hadn't been seen in over 18 centuries. You want to talk about the originals? I like people say, well, the originals say this. You got a copy of the original? Let me see. Man, if you got the original, let me see. Nobody knows what the originals say. And you say, well, I'm a TR. I use the Textus Receptus. Okay, well, there were 13 editions of the Textus Receptus at the translation of the King James Bible. 13 editions of the Textus Receptus at the time of the King James Bible translation. You had Erasmus, Stephanus, Beza's. Which one? And they all varied. Which one are you going to use? And kicking the camera here. And not only that, but you do realize, everybody does realize that the King James Bible is not exclusively translated from the Textus Receptus. You do understand that, right? And you talk about the Greek text like it's always been around. Listen, a Greek New Testament wasn't compiled until the 1500s. You know, you're talking about like this some Greek text that's always been around. They've always had a Greek Bible. No, you need to do your research, folks. Listen, there are places in this King James Bible that are from the Syrian Latin. There are places in this King James Bible that are from the minority text. What do you do with those places? What do you do with places that talk where the King James translators go with what the minority text says? Sounds like God may have had something to do with the translation work in 1611 or 1602, whenever they started up to. Sounds like God may have had his hand in the translation process. And don't tell anybody, but that may imply double inspiration. But that's heresy, and we know that can't be true. Listen, I love you. I'm praying for you. If you're not King James only, or if you use, if you feed into one of these lies, I love you and I'm praying for you. But don't try to put on a facade and try to say that you're King James only, and you're going to use all these logics and arguments and all this logic that the Bible critics who produced this trash pile of garbage Bibles, don't try to tell me that you're King James only when you use the same thought process that those Bible critics use. The very first time we ever see Satan, he's sitting under the tree of knowledge, and he's never left there. The first time we ever see Satan, he's sitting under the tree of knowledge, and he's never left. And listen, he'll say, yea, hath God said? Well, I'm here to tell you, God has said, and all Satan wants to do, listen, all Satan has to do is say, yea, hath God said? All right, folks, I'm done. I need to be done. I've got to get done. It's kind of like that one preacher who used to say, we better hurry lest we not finish. But fact of the matter is the King James Bible stands alone. Lies, falsehoods, half-truths, whatever you want to call them, have been put out against this book by the droves. And I am sickened by the fact that people in our own camp, in our own circles, who claim to be King James only, are spreading these lies like there's some kind of truth. Go back and study your history. Go back and look at the evidence and look at the facts. King James wasn't homosexual. You can read an original 1611. The only change, there are no revisions of the King James Bible. You want to see a revision? Here I go. Round 3, ding, ding, ding. You want to see a real revision of the King James Bible? Here's a real revision of the King James Bible. The New King James. Okay? Which is not even a real King James. You want to see a real revision of the King James Bible? Here it is. This, an original 1611, and this, a 1769 King James Bible. That's not a revision. That's simply an addition. You want to see a revision? This is a revision. The Revised Version, the RV, that's a revision. This is a revision. This ain't no revision. And you want to talk about lies and hypocrisy? Listen, that is a lie and that's hypocrisy. All right, I've got to be done. King James wasn't homosexual. That was started by Anthony Weldon. You can read an original 1611. Spelling and font and a few printing errors is all that's different between an original 1611 and a 1769. And trying to say that the King James 1611 King James Bible is not the final authority because it contained the Apocrypha. We already talked about that. That is the stupidest one. Okay. Anyway, I appreciate you. Listen, don't get caught up in all these lies. You've never met a more dishonest and hypocritical bunch than the pseudo King James only crowd. They're hypocritical and they'll lie. Listen, a man who will lie to you about the Bible will lie to you about anything. All right, folks, like and share. Get the word out there. I love you in the Lord. God bless you.